Hey Khyati, welcome to Just Like That.
Hey Sahil, how are you doing? Thank you for having me.
I am all good. I'm good. It's so nice to see you after so long.
Same here. I think we're meeting face to face for the first time.
Yes, we've spoken so many times. We've exchanged over 100 emails, but face to face, of course, on Zoom for the first time.
It's an absolute pleasure, Sahil.
So, Khyati, you had this wonderful ability to convert voices into words. How do you do that?
I would say, Sahil, this is a part of the passion I have, the inclination I have towards writing. And I think it started pretty early in my life, in my childhood
Hmm.
days. Yeah, I would say my initial memory of converting voices into words was, when I used to communicate with my father as a child through letters. So I used to write to him. It's very interesting. I did not have a face to face or direct conversation with my father until I was what, about 12 or 13. We used to have this
Wow.
hi dad, bye dad, hello dad kind of a conversation, but not a real conversation. I could not tell him my opinions. I was kind of scared of him, and I was also a very shy child. So I used to use letters to communicate with him.
But
Uh,
was your dad like in a different city, or were you in a different city, or were you guys
Absolutely
staying
not.
together?
Same household. No, no,
Oh,
absolutely. We're in the same household. And yet, imagine how shy I would be. I used to write to him through letters. I used to talk to him through letters. And the idea was, I felt that I could express myself better in written words than in spoken words. That was my idea. So I could not just walk up to him and say something, but I could put it very beautifully in a letter and hand it over to him. I used to put those letters on his study, and he would pick them up, he would read them. And yeah, that is how we used to have our conversations, apologies, opinions. That is how I expressed everything. So I think that is how it really started for me.
hmm. And did he also write letters back to you, or did he speak to you? Because you said it was only a hi dad, bye dad. So how did it work?
So I think, no, he did not write back to me. But after he had read those letters, he would obviously, if it was something I did or I achieved, he would give me a pat on the back. If it was an apology letter, he would smile back at me or an occasional hug. So no, he never wrote back, but I always got a response. So yeah.
Interesting. Very nice. In fact, I see a little bit of commonality there between you and me. Of course, I never wrote letters to
Uh-huh.
anyone, but I would definitely write down my pointers before talking to anyone because for me, as you rightly said, writing came a lot more naturally than speaking. And I said in the process of articulating my thoughts, had I written those bullet points, it really helped me speaking. So some commonality there.
Interesting, because I see a lot of people do that. So I personally do that. So before any meeting or any call or any presentation, I take down notes. I jot down pen pencil notes like properly on the paper. Not a lot of people do that now, but I'm more of a paper and pen person. So I jot down notes on the paper, and they actually help me, streamline my thoughts, speak better. Yeah. So a lot of people do
Do you,
that.
do you use different color pens and highlighters and those sticky notes and all of that?
Talk to me about it. I'm a nerd that way. Absolutely. So you
Interesting.
would find, different colors notes, different colored highlights. I even, change the font and the background color of my Word documents. I do that, Sahil. So yeah.
Okay, so let's move from your teenage days of writing letters to your father and then moving to communicating to the work that you do today. And the kind of work that you do today, I'm sure a lot of people would be reaching out to you because they have a story to tell. And I'm sure you help them articulate that story by putting their voice into words. So tell me a little bit about the kind of people who reach out. How do you really convert it? How do you decide what needs to get in, what doesn't need to get in? I'm sure you have filters.
Absolutely. So Sahil, as I just mentioned, I feel everybody has a story to tell. And I personally feel that if you provide the right platform, and if you help them put their words in the right way, every story is beautiful and every story comes out really well. So my first and foremost rule of filter, I would not call it a filter though, it's a personal rule that I have, is to let the writer be. Anybody who wants to tell a story, I just let them be. I tell them, you give me what you want to give me. You put it in whatever words you want to put. People ask me about, do you have a certain word limit that you want to, keep, you want us to follow? Or is there a certain type of style of writing, tone of writing? And I simply tell them that it's your story and it has to be in your voice, your tone, your word count. You do whatever you want to do it. And then send it to me, and I'll try my best to maintain the essence of it and yet make it more relatable for the readers. So I would say the people who reach out to me do the major part of it. They tell me their story in their voice, and I am just a medium. I would just maybe make it and articulate it better for the readership. That's about it.
I just love the humility you bring to the table, right? Because keeping the essence without diluting the essence, but at the same time making it crisper, making it reader friendly isn't an easy job.
So I think I picked this up pretty early in my career, Sahil. I was a writer once. I'm still a writer. Like I do writing other than my role, but I was just a writer once, and I used to go through a lot of editorial cycles myself. So there were a lot of pieces that ended up not sounding like my pieces. They used to sound like somebody else's pieces once they were edited. Of course, every editor has their own style of working, but personally, I picked that up as a learning, and I made sure that anytime in future when I edit something, when I become a part of the editorial process, I am going to keep it neutral from my end, and I'm going to make sure that the story comes out as the author wanted it to originally come out.
That's just so important, right? Because if an editor ends up adding his or her tonality to the whole thing,
Mhm.
of course, you get consistency in what you read, but then the individuality of the writer just simply goes away. So you made such a beautiful point there.
Right.
So also tell me, Khyati, I'm sure a lot of people reach out to you saying, why don't you put in my piece? Why don't you put in my story or my article or my thought leadership? And at times it's not possible. At times, maybe you've covered the entire issue. At times it doesn't meet the theme of the month, various permutations, combinations. And of course, a large part of your role would also be to say no, and maybe say no very politely. How do you go
Right.
about doing that?
So Sahil, saying no, yes, is a huge part of the job I do. And saying no does not come easy. It does not come easy to anybody, I would say. And I think you would agree there. Because, the person in front of you, the person who reaches out to you, has some kind of expectations from you. And letting somebody with expectations down is not easy. But as I said, it's a very important part of the role. And what I try to do is, of course, you have to be very polite, and you have to keep in mind the internal formulas or internal permutations and combinations that work for you in your job. But at the same time, I try that they do get the platform they're seeking. So that's the baseline for me. So instead of saying no, what I try to do is I try to find the best possible solution for them. So maybe what you're seeking is not what you need. I honestly feel that at times that what you're seeking is not what you need. So I try to pick the story, I try to look at the essence, I try to see what could be the best place for them to express their opinions. It could be very well possible that what you're seeking is an interview or what you're seeking is a column, but then maybe if you're seeking an interview, a column works best for you, or vice versa. So instead of just saying no, I understand how important it is for the other person to share their story. So I try to make sure that they do get that platform. Of course, there are instances when you can't do that as well. In that case, you have to tell them that maybe not now, maybe some other time. But I try my best that the story that they want to tell, it gets out there.
Lovely. I think so, Khyati, you're being very nice here, but we've had a couple of conversations over the years where people keep coming and knocking back again and saying, Khyati, please, Khyati, please, Khyati, please. And how do you say no the second time or the third time? Because if people really have an agenda, which may not fit into your scheme of things? And how do you then say a very polite no when the person keeps coming back with the same story or with the same content that might not really fit in?
Uh, I would really, say, Sahil, that that is how I save myself from the entire saying no conversation. I present an alternate route, and most of the time, luckily for me, that works out. People are understanding enough to see that, okay, since I have been in the industry, I understand content better. So maybe what I'm suggesting might work for them. So as I said, see, the desperation there, or the agenda mostly there is to, bring the story out there, put it out there for people to know. And if you do it one way or the other, I think it mostly works for people. So the idea of, as I said, I save myself from saying no that way. It's just to tell them, okay, maybe this is not the right way for you to tell your story. Maybe you can try telling it this way.
Got it. So apart from saying no, what's the most difficult part of your job?
I would say, as I mentioned earlier, also to maintain the essence and the voice of the author.
Right.
Because at times a few stories are they're not completely in line with the editorial guidelines that we set. So the idea is to formulate them in a way that they set in the editorial guidelines, they fall into the kind of content we want to create for our readership, and of course the meaning, the essence is not diluted there. So that's a
Got it.
challenge.
So, Khyati, I'm going to really now call out the elephant in the room, right? And apologies, this is just like that conversation. So let's be as candid can be, because we've not discussed this earlier. When I started my entire journey of writing, and I'll take my own personal example, right? A lot of people came back and said, "Oh, but you're very junior." A lot of people said, "You write very well, Sahil, but you don't have the title that we need." And again, no reference to any kind of publication house, but just a very general view.
Uh-huh.
And I said, okay. Maybe titles are important, maybe positions are important, maybe brands and organizations are important. But why is there so much focus on that and not on the content or the story or the person who's saying the story, irrespective of what title? And again, Khyati, I've noticed this now being in the fraternity for so many years, that even when people give up positions or with 20, 30 years of experience decide to hang their boots and start their own boutique setups, they are suddenly perceived very differently. They don't make headlines as much as they would make when they're holding positions of power. So is it more about the title and the organization, or is it more about the power of the story? What's your take?
So if I am to speak from a personal standpoint, Sahil, for me, it is about the power of the story. And I try to, look at the story the person is trying to present, and not more on not focus more on where he's coming from or what's his position. Of course, experience matters, because the more you are in a set of industry, the more time you spend in a domain, the more you know about it. But then at the end of the day, what story do you bring to the table is also equally important. So for me, it is a balance of the two.
Lovely. And as we really take part and move away and drift away from this wonderful conversation, Khyati, what's the one or two things you like to give as advice to budding writers out there who really want to get known, who want to be visible, who want to make their mark? So all the budding writers or all the viewers of JLT, as they hear you today, what is it that you want to share with them?
So Sahil, I don't think I am in a position to give out tips to anybody, but I would say the one thing that I was taught when I was a writer myself, when I was starting early in my career, there was this one thing that one of my mentors taught me, which was write as you speak. So as a practice, I write things down and then I read them out loud. It's a practice that I follow till date. In fact, articles come in from different people, and I try to apply the same practice to that as well. So I read out everything I write, and if it's a mouthful, if it's something that I feel, oh my god, I'm not going to use so much verbiage, so then I edit it accordingly. So that's one thing, read things out loud. And then the other thing would be, keep it as short and crisp as possible, because nobody has the time to go lengthy these days. When I started writing, of course, there was a lot of, there was not a lot of inclination towards social media and short form posts, but now it is. So the idea is to keep it short, keep it crisp, and keep it very direct. Yeah.
Lovely. And the last question from my side, what's your take on ghost writers?
So I was a ghostwriter myself, Sahil, and I would say, I would really not say I have a take on them, but I would say I really appreciate the kind of efforts they put in, because it is their soul and their form that goes into the entire piece. And I really appreciate people who take up ghostwriting and they take up so seriously.
But do you feel used as a ghostwriter? Because you're in the background, your thoughts, your soul, someone else's name.
I
Uh,
think it's a matter of choice, Sahil. If somebody's chosen to do ghostwriting, I think that's on some kind of, they might have some kind of purpose to it, right? So I think it's just a matter of choice, and every writer has their day of having their name written under, or their article bylined by their name. Every writer reaches that in their journey. That stage comes for everybody. So I don't kind of think that, there's something where you would say that ghostwriters are used. I would just say it's just a stage in the journey, and everybody kind of passes that stage. I have been there myself, and yeah, it's just a phase.
Lovely, Khyati. Thank you so much for living up to the theme of Just Like That, candid conversations with minds on things that matter. I truly enjoyed this conversation, Khyati. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sahil. I really appreciate you for inviting me here and doing this. It was a pleasure speaking with you, talking about things that I might not have talked about in a very long time. So thank you so much for having me.